December 1941. Richard Bong, just 20 years old, joined the United States Army Air Forces in the midst of a nation suddenly at war. The attack on Pearl Harbor had galvanized the country, and young men from across the United States volunteered to serve. Bong completed his primary flight training at Luke Field, Arizona, and quickly moved on to advanced fighter pilot instruction at a remote airbase in California. There, he became familiar with the P-38 Lightning, a twin-engine fighter with superior speed, climb rate, and armament compared to most Japanese aircraft. The P-38's twin booms and central nacelle were unconventional, yet Bong adapted to its unique flight characteristics with ease, demonstrating an early aptitude that would define his career. He mastered high-altitude maneuvers, formation flying, and gunnery techniques critical for air combat over the Pacific. By late 1942, Bong was assigned to the 49th Fighter Squadron, 14th Pursuit Group, destined for deployment in the Southwest Pacific. The squadron's mission was clear: gain air superiority, protect Allied shipping, and engage Japanese aircraft whenever possible. Bong's arrival coincided with escalating air battles over New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. At this stage of the war, American pilots were learning through attrition, gaining experience in high-stakes combat that demanded quick thinking, precision, and nerves of steel. Bong observed the limitations of existing tactics against the agile Mitsubishi A6M0, noting that standard dive and climb maneuvers often left pilots exposed. It was here that he began developing his personal combat style, blending aggression with calculated risk, a method that would soon redefine aerial engagements in the Pacific theater. Despite his youth, Bong's understanding of energy management, trading altitude for speed and positioning, was already beyond that of many veteran pilots. These early months established the foundation for the extraordinary career that would make him the United States' highest-scoring ace of World War II. January 1943. Richard Bong arrived in New Guinea with the 49th Fighter Squadron, stepping into a theater of war vastly different from any training exercise. The skies were dominated by the Mitsubishi A6M0, renowned for its agility and light weight, capable of outmaneuvering most Allied aircraft in a dogfight. Bong quickly realized that conventional tactics taught in the United States were often ineffective against these highly maneuverable opponents. Early missions involved escorting bombers and intercepting enemy reconnaissance aircraft, tasks that required sharp reflexes, precise judgment, and constant awareness of the surroundings. Bong observed patterns in Japanese flying. The Zero relied on energy advantage, using altitude and speed to control engagements. Standard boom and zoom tactics, diving attacks followed by climbs to regain energy, were often too slow to catch nimble opponents in dense jungle airspace. Within days, Bong began experimenting with unorthodox maneuvers, trading altitude for positioning, exploiting enemy overconfidence, and carefully timing gun bursts. On his third mission, Bong encountered a formation of 3 Zeros approaching Allied bombers. Using a high-speed diving pass, he shot down one, forced another to disengage, and avoided return fire entirely. His instincts, honed during rigorous training, combined with quick adaptation, earned him immediate respect from his squadron. Word spread. This young pilot could read the sky like a chessboard, predicting enemy movements before they happened. By the end of January, Bong had achieved his first confirmed aerial victory. The mission was brief on paper but revolutionary in practice. He applied observation, energy management, and tactical creativity in ways that few pilots dared. This small victory marked the beginning of a career defined not only by numbers of enemy aircraft destroyed but also by innovation in air combat tactics. The lessons Bong absorbed in these early months would later become critical as he faced increasingly coordinated Japanese fighter groups over the Solomon Islands. February 1943. Bong's missions intensified as the 49th Fighter Squadron engaged in continuous sorties over the dense jungles and rugged mountains of New Guinea. Japanese fighter patrols increased in number and coordination, attempting to protect supply lines and challenge Allied air superiority. Bong quickly adapted to the evolving threat, refining his situational awareness and developing a rhythm in aerial combat. On February 12th, Bong's flight encountered a formation of 6 Zeros approaching a convoy of Allied bombers. Bong, flying slightly above the formation, initiated a dive attack, exploiting his aircraft's superior speed. In the ensuing chaos, he focused on isolating one enemy fighter at a time, minimizing the risk of being surrounded. Within minutes, Bong shot down 2 Zeros, his gunnery precise and controlled. His wingmen provided cover and tracked additional threats, a system of mutual support enhanced by clear radio communication. The squadron observed how Bong's methodical approach contrasted with the aggressive, instinct-driven tactics of other pilots. He measured each attack, calculating angles, distances, and energy retention with exceptional precision. Over the next week, Bong achieved 4 more aerial victories, bringing his confirmed kills to 6 in less than a month. The Japanese pilots, accustomed to rapid, chaotic engagements, found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered by Bong's disciplined, calculated style. Reports from his squadron noted that he rarely engaged in unnecessary dogfights. Instead, he struck decisively and withdrew to preserve energy and position for future engagements. His emerging reputation drew the attention of both peers and superiors. Bong was not only effective but also remarkably consistent, demonstrating that aerial combat could be mastered through observation, anticipation, and strategic execution. These early victories set the tone for the remainder of his deployment in the Southwest Pacific, establishing tactical principles he would refine and rely on in his legendary campaigns over the Solomon Islands. March 1943. Richard Bong's missions shifted from patrols to offensive sweeps over Japanese airfields in the Solomon Islands. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy aircraft were regrouping at Henderson Field and nearby airstrips to challenge American air dominance. Bong and his squadron began flying at low altitude to evade radar detection and maximize surprise, a risky tactic that relied on precise timing and coordination. On March 15th, Bong's flight intercepted a group of 8 Japanese Zeros attempting to take off from a small airstrip near Guadalcanal. Utilizing a combination of high-speed dives and climbing maneuvers, Bong engaged the enemy while ensuring his wingmen maintained coverage. Within 4 minutes, Bong had downed 3 Zeros, demonstrating exceptional marksmanship and tactical foresight. The Japanese pilots, expecting head-on engagements at higher altitudes, struggled against his unpredictable attack patterns. Observers noted that Bong maintained energy superiority, avoiding prolonged turning dogfights that favored the nimble Zero. Over the next week, Bong completed multiple sweeps, achieving a total of 6 additional aerial victories, bringing his official tally to 12. Squadron intelligence began referring to his approach as calculated aggression. Each attack was deliberate, each withdrawal timed to preserve advantage. Bong's radio discipline and situational awareness allowed his flight to operate as a cohesive unit, each pilot aware of the other's positioning and intentions. By the end of March, his actions had forced the Japanese to revise standard operating procedures, increasing the altitude of patrols and spacing of formations, inadvertently creating openings for American fighters. Bong's early campaigns over the Solomons exemplified a new form of air combat, one that combined individual skill with systematic coordination, maximizing both survivability and lethality. April 1943 marked a tactical shift in Richard Bong's combat style. By this point, his reputation was growing inside the 49th Fighter Group, and commanders noticed that Bong consistently achieved results when operating ahead of the formation. Without breaking orders, he began flying slightly offset from the main group, using clouds and terrain to mask his approach. This wasn't recklessness. Bong understood that the P-38's twin-engine acceleration and high-altitude performance allowed him to dictate the terms of combat more effectively when he engaged first. During this period, he began conducting what pilots described as solo interception entries. Short, calculated breaks from formation designed to hit Japanese aircraft before they could form defensive circles. On April 18th, Bong encountered a formation of 12 Japanese fighters escorting bombers toward Allied positions near Oro Bay. Instead of diving straight into the center of the formation as many pilots might attempt, Bong angled his approach toward the outermost fighter, striking from below where the Zero had limited visibility. His first burst ignited the aircraft instantly. As the Japanese fighters reacted and broke formation, Bong used the resulting chaos to isolate another target, downing it within seconds. By the time his squadron arrived, Bong had already disrupted the entire escort group, forcing the bombers to turn back. After the engagement, intelligence officers noted an emerging pattern. Bong didn't simply shoot accurately. He influenced enemy behavior. His early attacks forced Japanese pilots to abandon tight formation flying and adopt scattered, defensive maneuvers, weakening their collective effectiveness. These actions triggered internal discussions within Japanese command about revising fighter escort procedures. Reports intercepted later revealed concern over an American pilot who consistently attacked from non-standard angles and withdrew before counterattacks could be coordinated. They labeled him the ghost diver. Bong's approach was defined by three principles: attack early, attack from angles the enemy didn't train for, and exit the fight before energy was lost. His success wasn't luck or aggression, it was a systematic application of air combat physics. By the end of April, Bong added 4 more victories, raising his total to 16 and establishing himself as one of the most analytically minded pilots in the Pacific. By early 1944, Richard Bong's name was known not only in the United States but inside the Japanese Army's headquarters. The reason was simple. He was shooting down their aircraft faster than they could replace them. But one operation marked a turning point, when Japan sent a specific pilot to hunt him down. His name was Yasuhiko Kikuyo, a Zero pilot who had fought in China, the Philippines, and Guadalcanal. He was used like a precision weapon. If an American ace caused too many problems, Kikuyo was dispatched to remove him. This wasn't romantic dueling, it was cold strategy. U.S. intelligence noticed an unusual concentration of elite Japanese fighters and passed the warning to Bong's airfield. For the first time, he was told, "They're coming for you." Bong stayed calm. He knew the Lightning's strengths, climb, speed, and altitude, could decide the fight before the enemy even understood the setup. The battle started suddenly. A pair of Zeros tried to attack from above, a classic Japanese maneuver. But this is where Bong's genius showed itself. Instead of diving away, he pulled his P-38 upward directly into them, using dual Allison V-1710 engines in full emergency power. The Zero simply couldn't follow. Its engine lost performance at altitude. Kikuyo realized the mistake, but too late. Bong entered the fight from a dominant position. First, he eliminated the wingman with a single short burst of his 20mm cannon and 4.50 caliber machine guns. Then it became a one-on-one duel. It lasted only 40 seconds. That's what shocked American analysts the most. Bong didn't waste time on horizontal turns. He fought vertically, dive, climb, dive again. The Zero physically couldn't mirror these movements. On the third cycle, the Japanese pilot bled too much speed and became a stationary target. Bong fired from roughly 250 meters, a perfectly calculated distance. Kikuyo was killed instantly. This engagement became pivotal. For the first time, Japanese command acknowledged that the P-38 Lightning outmatched the legendary Zero not because of pilot skill alone, but because of engineering and tactical advantages, and Bong used them better than anyone. After the battle, Japan officially marked him as a high-priority target. And the U.S. realized they had a pilot who could break not just enemy aircraft but enemy doctrine itself. After the duel with Kikuyo, U.S. command began to analyze why Bong's success rate was impossibly consistent, while other aces showed far more unpredictable results. That analysis eventually reshaped Pacific air combat doctrine. The core mistake most Allied pilots made was trying to copy the European way of fighting. Over Europe, dense formations, mutual support, radio coordination, and strict orders worked flawlessly. Over New Guinea's jungles, everything broke down. Radios failed, clouds formed and vanished in minutes, and Japanese Zeros could drop out of nowhere at 400 meters, leaving no time to maneuver. Bong was the first to fly differently than the manuals dictated. He relied on personal geometry, not formation strength. He chose his attack angle, controlled engagement distance, avoided prolonged dogfights, and always climbed vertically instead of escaping horizontally. By mid-1944, analysts noticed a clear pattern. Most of Bong's victims lost airspeed before he fired. He forced them into bad positions, making them cross the Lightning's trajectory at an angle they couldn't escape. It was a mathematical exploitation of the Zero's weaknesses. Most important, Bong broke an unwritten rule. An ace must be universal. He wasn't universal. He was a specialist. He rarely escorted bombers, avoided tight formation flying, didn't volunteer for long-range missions, and stayed away from vertical spirals where the P-38 lost its advantages. At first, High Command saw this as a problem. Then the statistics arrived. During months when Bong was active, Japanese activity in his sector dropped by nearly one-third. The enemy simply avoided encountering him. It was during this period that Bong reached his record 40 victories, a number no American has surpassed since. He proved that, in the Pacific, victory belonged not to the system pilot, but to the pilot who could reshape the system around his own strengths. When Richard Bong passed 30 victories, the U.S. officially recognized him as their top ace. But few knew that, at the same time, Japanese intelligence also placed his name on a priority target list. It was one of the rare cases where both sides of a war documented the same pilot as an operational-level threat. The reason became clear only after the war, when Imperial Army records were declassified. Inside those reports appeared a coded label, "The Silver Demon Who Fights Alone." Analysts later confirmed this referred specifically to Bong's P-38 Lightning. Japanese observers noticed a detail. His sorties didn't match the timing of standard American missions. He took off when other squadrons were still prepping, creating the illusion of a hidden U.S. interception unit, not a lone pilot. Imperial Air Force commanders even assigned pairs of Zeros not to track U.S. formations, but to track Bong's individual aircraft serial number. This was unprecedented. Targets were usually formations, not people. They also recorded a phenomenon they couldn't explain. Every time Bong's Lightning appeared, some Japanese pilots suddenly stopped maneuvering aggressively. Post-war interviews revealed the cause. Frontline rumors claimed that no tactic existed against a P-38 flown by the Silver Demon. For the Imperial Air Service, Bong became more than an ace. He became a systemic operational risk, capable of influencing mission timing. Some 1944 air raids on American positions were delayed by a full day simply because observers detected a Lightning performing a distinctive climb pattern associated with Bong. The Americans, crucially, had no idea this was happening. They saw only reduced Japanese activity and the rising public profile of Bong as a national hero. By the end of 1944, Bong had become the only U.S. pilot who was America's top-scoring ace, was designated a priority-level threat by Japan, and directly affected operational planning by both sides. Wars rarely show how a single man can change the tempo of an entire theater. But the Pacific was an exception, and Bong became the proof. By the time Richard Bong scored his 40th kill, he had already become a legend, though he never wanted to be one. Command sent him home not as a celebration but out of fear of losing him. In 1944, he was the last pilot still flying as if the war had just begun. Aggressive, close-range, flawless. Unlike other aces, Bong didn't chase records. He simply took off, found the enemy, and shot them down before they understood what had happened. America welcomed him as a tired nation craving symbols of victory. Bong became proof that one pilot could still change the course of battles. His quiet personality only amplified the myth around him. He avoided interviews, refused political spotlights, and spoke as little as possible. He didn't want fame. He just wanted to fly. After returning home, he was assigned as a test pilot for the new P-80 Shooting Star, the first mass-produced American jet fighter. The assignment looked like an honor, but it was far more dangerous than frontline combat. Early jet engines were unpredictable. Flameouts, fuel system failures, sudden loss of thrust. On August 20, 1945, the very day America celebrated victory over Japan, Richard Bong took off for another test flight. Minutes after takeoff, the engine failed. He attempted to bail out but didn't have enough altitude. America's number one ace died only a few kilometers from the runway. His death wasn't part of the war's final battles, but part of the transition to a new era. Bong became the last great ace of piston-engine air combat. His record of 40 kills has never been surpassed by any American pilot, and never will be. The age of one-on-one dogfighting ended with him. He never sought glory, yet became the standard of excellence. He didn't chase numbers, yet set a record that stands untouched. And he lived a life where the scoreboard mattered less than the precision, discipline, and calm with which he did his job.